And welcome to the Recovery Therapist. This episode, we're going to talk about what the first 30 days of recovery is like. The last episode, we spent time on the first 7 days, which is that acute withdrawal period. And this time we're going to follow up. We'll talk a little bit about that just as a refresher. And then we'll talk about kind of the remainder of those 30 days and what that might look like for you. For some folks, those first 7 days are probably some of the hardest. It's certainly one of the more dangerous parts of early recovery. There's a lot of traps for us, so we just got to be really careful about as we kind of move forward and make sure that we understand what's going on with us to give us the best chance to remain sober during that period. During those first 14 days, and once we hit that 14-day mark, there's a lot of just confusion that's going on within our brain and what's going on with us as the body's trying to make its readjustments back to what we would call kind of that normal space, right? It can lead to some brain fog and some other challenging components as we try to process information. And we're kind of in a one down position where the brain is not working at its most optimal. So today we're going to walk through the first 30 days and we'll explore that timeline and we'll explain one of those things that can lead to early relapse during that first 30 days. That term is called post-acute withdrawal symptom, or PAWS. There's some protracted symptoms that go on beyond that first kind of 7 days. So just a brief overview. If you remember last episode, we talked about early acute withdrawal, the 72 hours after that last drink has left your system. Some of the symptoms that we see are sweating, excessive sweating, irritability. We get some insomnia, some anxiety. We can have the shakes. As the more dangerous things start to come into play for withdrawal, those would include hallucinations, whether that's auditory, where I'm hearing things, visual, where I'm seeing things, or tactile, where I'm feeling some sort of touching. If we start to get into that space, it really is important that you get to an emergency room and seek medical attention. Again, alcohol is one of those things that we can withdraw from that really is dangerous. And so we want to make sure that you're safe and taken care of. And just as a reminder for me, that first week really wasn't necessarily about me gaining personal growth or anything like that. It was for me just really trying just to survive and get through that period. So at that point, really what we're looking to do is make sure that we stay hydrated. Our body's kind of depleted as far as minerals and vitamins, so we can start eating a little better, get a multivitamin going, including thiamine. And we want to make sure that we remain kind of in a safe environment. If we need that medical attention, that we engage that. So in days 8 through 14, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that occur during this period. Essentially, our emotions are just kind of all over the place. And we see kind of two different sides of it. One is the pink cloud, which we touched base on in the last episode, but the other is the void. And is now that alcohol's left our system, we are no longer numbing ourselves. For a lot of folks, including myself, the reason why I drank is I just didn't want to feel. I didn't want to think. I just used alcohol to allow me to check out, right? So when that gerbil wheel started spinning, I drank a little alcohol and that stopped and that went away. Didn't like the way I was feeling, drank a little alcohol, and essentially that feeling went away. So now that we've removed the alcohol from the body, some of those emotions now are starting to come back. And the reality is we haven't dealt with those emotions. We haven't learned how to cope with those emotions. And so they feel very raw for us. And so it becomes important that we start to develop coping strategies in order to address some of that stuff. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about building that recovery platform and how we start to build some of those strategies in order to help us deal with life on life's terms. So the first trap we talked about was the pink cloud. And essentially what happens during the pink cloud phase is because the alcohol's moved, man, I feel great. This is awesome. There's this euphoric kind of space that we run into. And as mentioned before, that the challenge with that is all of a sudden, that is my expectation about what recovery is going to be like for the rest of time. And that's not the reality of it at all. Essentially, I'm just in a good space where I've moved the alcohol, but I really haven't started to deal with any of that other stuff, my life, some of the consequences that have occurred. All I know is I feel good. And so now all of a sudden my expectation is oh, well, this is easy. I'll be able to get through this without a problem. I'm feeling great. Now that I quit drinking, it's not an issue. Eventually life is going to occur. And I really haven't developed any kind of coping strategy or way to deal with that. So it becomes very frustrating for me that why isn't my recovery like this all the time? And the reason is because I really haven't developed any kind of recovery. Essentially, I've just been sober, dried out a little bit, and feel a little bit better, I haven't really started to move into what I would call more of those recovery behaviors, more of that sobriety kind of space. And so we want to be real careful when we have that pink cloud that we don't necessarily use that as an excuse to, well, I don't really need to do anything other than this, I just need to not drink. Because if that was the issue, we probably would have been able to solve this a while back by just not drinking. And that's not really how addiction evolved for me. The second trap I think I want to talk about is called the void. And for the void, it's a little bit different. For the void, I'm not sure that this is really worth it. We're kind of in this down space. For me, I think this is what I saw when I was in that relapse space over those 2 years where I just couldn't seem to find any long-term sobriety. And what I remember about that specifically is not only did I think that recovery wasn't worth it, but my self-esteem had really taken a shot. And the reality was I didn't really feel like I was worth it. And essentially the shame had come in, and that critical voice would just rattle away inside my head. And it would just tell me, oh, this recovery, you're not worth it. You don't deserve it. I would just kind of eventually give into it and say, yeah, I don't deserve this. I'm not worth it. And all that critical, shame-based, negative thought stuff was just running rampant in my head. And so I'd be able to fight it off for a period of time, a week or two. But again, then it would become just so overwhelming that eventually that would just lead to me relapsing, just to quiet that voice. As we talked about earlier, that's what I was using alcohol to do, is just to quiet that gerbil wheel and not feel the emotions. What was different for me the last time out is I started to see that I was worth recovery and that I did deserve it, that recovery could be a part of my life and it wasn't so scary or so difficult. I just needed to do a few certain kinds of things that were being told to me. I just didn't listen. But I think for me, there are times where I didn't know until I knew. And what I mean by that is people told me stuff all the time. And I just didn't know until all of a sudden it clicked for me. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. So early recovery this last time out, I think was part of that, where all of a sudden I started to understand what that acceptance was to addiction and how I can motivate and move myself to a better spot. And talking a little bit about post-acute withdrawal, there's some nuanced out there. There's really not a clear definition of it. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, or also known as ASAM, they do recognize pause or post-acute withdrawal as part of the symptomatology that can occur once we get into that recovery space. And really, this is just an educational piece for you. So if you feel some of this stuff going on, you can recognize it for what it is. There really isn't a clear timeline that's established for how long this stuff lasts. And again, part of what will start to address this post-acute withdrawal is when we start to get into that recovery space and learn how to manage some of those emotions. What we see from that is the brain fog, difficulty with concentration. We're having challenges with getting good sleep. We have irritability, and a lot of times it's an emotional overreaction. And lastly, we have maybe some coordination issues. And the brain at this point is just really trying to reset. It's trying to remap and redo a bunch of stuff. And so there's a lot of energy that's going into that. And because these are new pathways, we haven't necessarily established some of the ways that we're dealing with what I would call kind of that life on life's terms. So your brain is essentially building new neural pathways. It's like a construction zone. It's loud and messy. But again, there are ways that we can kind of start to address this as we move forward. Clinically, we think about post-acute withdrawal and pause, and the term that comes to mind is cognitive impairment or emotional lability. Again, I think as I relate back to my own personal experience, I was just a hot mess. I remember that things would get really frustrating really easily for me. I had difficulty managing my emotions. Normally, something that was not that big of a deal would hit me like a ton of bricks, and I would have some sort of emotional reaction to it. It's okay to be angry. I just don't want to be so angry that I'm putting holes in the wall. And that ability to kind of manage those emotions really was difficult during that period. A lot of times I felt stupid. What am I doing? And that just fed into that shame, that fed into that parent voice that was just always critical, that was always saying, what are you doing? we need to not think about this stuff. Let's go drink. My hope is if you didn't know about pause, that when that voice says, you feel terrible, let's just go drink, that now you've got a name to it and you can recognize it for what it is and understand that this isn't the lifetime. This is just right here, right now. And eventually our body will work through and we'll move past that. Although it doesn't necessarily, again, feel that way like we'll ever move past it, but you will. And so we just need to kind of sit tight and allow the process to unfold and allow our recovery to kind of open up and give us a chance to some long-term abstinence. So what are some of those emotions that we talked about as far as pause? There's an acronym in recovery and it's called HALT. And that stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I would also put overwhelmed on the end of that. We can have one of those or multiple of those going on at once. And essentially what's going on is I'm operating out of a very emotional spot in my brain, which is kind of that old brain spot. If I'm able to start to recognize that stuff when I'm in early recovery, then I can address it. If I'm hungry, let me go grab something to eat. If I'm angry, what am I angry about? Is it really reasonable? Can I just go spend a little bit of time? In early recovery, one of the best things I ever learned was, just don't react. Just go spend some time. Go take a time out, right? I ended up giving myself a time out multiple times. Maybe if I'm lonely, then I seek out somebody and I try to keep a group of people in my phone that I could always reach out to and talk to when I was having those moments of loneliness. Tired, obviously, maybe I need to just go down and take a nap. Again, early recovery, it's difficult to just find any kind of sleep, regular kind of sleep cycles. And so it may just mean that I just need to take a nap. Not looking to do a whole lot of productive stuff during this period, just because I'm not really able to manage my thoughts in a way that becomes really effective for me. And obviously, if I'm overwhelmed, lastly, I think for that, again, I just need to go take a time out. I need to take a break. Like one of the best coping strategies that I learned in early recovery is one day at a time. And that is, I just focus on taking care of my business right here, right now. I'm just going to try to stay sober today. A lot of times that stuff that I'm feeling overwhelmed about is stuff that's going to happen in the future. And I don't have an answer to that. Or I'm overwhelmed because of the shame that I felt from the past. And the reality is, the past is the past. I can't change it. I just need to own it. So pulling myself back into the moment and focusing, what do I need to do today to stay sober today? And working really towards that helps a lot of times with that overwhelming sensation that occurs during that pause moment. And when I get into that halt spot, those are things that can really lead to some relapse triggers. So I just need to be aware of it, pay attention to it, and make sure I address it as I start to recognize it. This is not going to be like a light switch where I just flip it on and everything gets better. This is a work in progress. Part of it is just me paying attention. Oh, okay, that's when I was angry. Let me see if I can fix that. Oh, I was tired there. Let me see if I can fix that. Oh, I was hungry there. What can I do in order to address that in the future? And just get a little bit better at it each day. It doesn't mean that I fix it the first time that I try it. It's about progress. It's not about perfection. It's about progressing and understanding what's going on and just getting a little bit better each day. Second step after we kind of address HALT is, I'm going to call it the do nothing rule. And essentially, in your first 30 days, so don't make any major decisions. Don't quit your job. Don't ask for a divorce. Don't start training for a marathon. Your brain is really still, we're under construction here. And a lot of times we're feeling ambivalent about choices and we feel compelled to make a choice. I've got to make this choice now. And again, that one day at a time, do I really need to make that choice today? I think for me, as I look back, there was this ambivalence where one day I thought I needed to do this. And then the next day I was like, I think I want to do the opposite. And I just didn't have a really good feel about what was really important and what was really the right choice. And luckily I had somebody in my life who at that point in time, I went to them and I'm like, I just don't know what to do. This is what I feel today and tomorrow I'll probably feel this way. What do I need to do? And they came back with, do you have to make that choice today? And my answer was, well, no, I don't. And he said, okay. Well, good. Let's not make that choice today. And when tomorrow comes, if you don't need to make that choice tomorrow, then don't make that choice. He said, eventually, you'll get to a place where you feel like you need to make a choice. And when you get to that spot, come to me and we'll talk about it, and then we'll make the decision. Kind of the third thing I want to talk about is that 15-minute craving rule. Generally, when we have cravings, they last 10 to 20 minutes, somewhere within that. So if we can just hold on and not do anything during that initial phase, essentially there's some sort of trigger that's going on that's saying, hey, we should drink right now. And so if we can just kind of sit with that and not do anything, eventually that will go away. I used alcohol as a replacement. I didn't like the way I feel. I would drink and I would replace that feeling. I didn't like what I was thinking. I would drink, I would replace that thinking. In this coping strategy where I'm using the 15-minute rule, finding something else to do in that initial 15 minutes, again, moves me away from whatever that idea, that craving idea that comes in. Again, it's a replacement. I have the urge to use. I replace that by going and doing something else. Maybe I go take a walk. Maybe I make a phone call. Whatever I need to do to get my mind off of that and focus on something else. Because if I don't focus on something else, what I find is that just sits there and grooves itself in and continues to give me that, oh, we should drink, we should drink, we should drink. By having a replacement activity or doing something different, that helps. So you may want to come up with some replacement strategies even before you have that, because eventually it's going to happen. No doubt about it in my mind. So have some already kind of in your pocket. So when you do have that, this is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to grab the dogs and we're going to go take a walk, or I'm going to go throw the ball with the dogs, or I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to phone a friend and have a conversation. Again, I'm looking to replace that urge or that desire with something else that's a little bit more productive and in support of my recovery. So whether you're on day 4, 14, or 30, sometimes it just feels like I'm trudging through mud, that it's just this overwhelming slog. And that's probably the post-acute withdrawal that's affecting us. And what I'll share with you is we just need to kind of process through that, to go ahead and be okay with that radical acceptance where this is the truth, this is my reality, this is really what's going on. Objectively looking at it and saying, yeah, I feel like this is a slog. And know that eventually I'm going to work through this. One day at a time. This isn't going to be the future. This isn't going to last forever. I just need to get through today. And when tomorrow comes, I'll get through tomorrow. And eventually I'll work my way through it. Again, homeostasis is the body wants to stay within a certain range. And when it's out of that range, it works to get back in that. So this slog and this feeling low and bad is outside the range, and the body will eventually want to work its way back up into that range and be in that healthy spot. So trust in that. When you're in it, having somebody say trust in that, I know it can be a bit of a challenge, but I can share with you that that's how it worked for me. And hopefully that's how it will work for you. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about how we build a recovery platform. What things do I need to start doing now that I'm in that early recovery spot to start building a foundational place where I don't have to feel miserable, that I can start to feel a little bit better, that I can start to do things that feel like they're steam building and I feel better about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So as far as building that recovery platform, we want to build that to move into a space where we're starting to feel healthy. I always think about the difference between somebody who, what we call is a dry drunk versus someone who's in recovery. And a dry drunk is someone who's just miserable, that they are resentful about the fact that they don't get to drink again, or they can't drink like other people, or why can't I go back to just regular controlled drinking, and they resent the fact that they can't have alcohol, and they're really pretty miserable, and it's just a bad place to be. Versus someone who's in recovery who sees that space of recovery with gratitude, that they're really grateful that they don't have to drink anymore. That is such a different shift between those two. And if we can get to that space of, I'm really grateful that I don't have to drink anymore, that's a lot easier to manage as I move forward. And that's the hope as we start to look at this, building that recovery platform, is getting to that space where I do find gratitude that I don't have to drink anymore. So if you have any thoughts about whether you're in that space or you remember that space, drop them in the comments. If you like this episode, please hit the like and subscribe if you want to be a part of the community. I appreciate you guys being here. It's been awesome, and we'll see you next time.